And actually towards the bottom, I see that I can see many, many more trunks. I can't see that many trunks as the foliage goes up because it's more full and dense. But at the bottom, where there's not as much foliage, I can see many more trunks, which is a good thing to think about. As I finish up this shoreline, I can add lots more trunks. Now, because it's hot and windy, it'll be drying quickly, so I need to keep that in mind as I start. But I want to put the water across the entire page so I'll have a harmonious feel. So all of this will have a little bit of a continuity. If I only painted this side, then came back and painted this other side, it might not seem like it's the same painting. A lot of these trees are in front of the house, so I will be thinking of that, but I don't want the house completely wet or I'll obliterate it unintentionally. When I get done with this side, I'll probably need to add water again on the other side to make sure everything is even. By changing my point of view, I can see where it's shiny. And where it's shiny is where it's wet. As I'm adding the paint, I will be alert to my sky holes so that I don't cover them all up. I'm going to start with a very, very light yellow-green. Oh, here we go. Oh, the brush just fell over the side. So I think it would help to wipe off my palette a little bit. I have quite a mishmash of color going on. Okay. So I'll take a little bit of cerulean and a little bit of Winsor blue. I have some other colors on my palette, so they're dulling the blues down. I'm okay with that. It'll give me a green that's not too bright. It'll be a little duller, and that'll be fine. Oh, I hear some wonderful bird. I don't know what bird that is, but it has a great sound. Maybe you can hear it too. I saw several woodpeckers yesterday. They were fun to see. Okay, I'm going to look where my water is, and I'm just dancing on the surface. I'm trying to keep my brush strokes varied so things don't get too repetitive. I'm staying conscious of my sky holes, and yet I'm trying to add some wonderful color around. Now right now it doesn't have to look like foliage or anything really. I just want to add some color. I don't know if you noticed that, but my paintbrush spit green all the way across. There's some days that paintbrushes just spit. Don't know why that is. So another thing to be attentive to, spitting paintbrushes. Used to really get me angry. Then I figured, yeah, well, we can deal with it. I've had bigger problems. It's funny though, a paintbrush, you might use it for weeks and weeks and weeks, no spitting, then all of a sudden one day it'll just really start in. I don't know why. Maybe some of you know why. You can let me know. As you know, you can see more demonstrations on our Facebook page. That's Watching Paint Dry, LLC. And then, of course, on our website, which is also Watching Paint Dry. It's watchingpaintdry.com. You can see that by using the same color across this page, I have allowed it to stay harmonious. You can see also where some places it's bleeding, and running together. In some places it's staying right where I put it. And that's the difference between where the paper is wet and where the paper is dry underneath. And I like that very mottled look. In a minute I'll turn it around so you can see a right side up version. I think it's easier to tell what's going on if you're not familiar with looking at things upside down. Boy, being a watercolor artist has made it really easy for me to read things upside down on people's desks, so beware. Okay, I'm liking how this is looking. It's a really nice beginning coat to what I want to be doing here. I like the color, it's not too overwhelming. I like how it gives me enough sky holes. I'll turn it around so you can have a better look at it. Gives a nice overall layer to the top. I have enough of it coming down to the foreground. I haven't obliterated the house. I might put a couple more blobs in there though. There we go. Yeah, that'll be good. Because there definitely are trees there in the front. Okay, there's quite a bit of wetness there. I'm going to let that dry before I do anything else on that point. I love the fact that where the sun is right now and it's hitting that bank, it is a brilliant yellow green. I'd call that a Edward Hopper yellow green. I can remember some of his watercolor paintings where he has the yellow green streaking across the landscape, and I love that feeling. So I'm gonna try that too. I'm gonna take a wonderful yellow, mix it with some of my this is called a sap green, or in this particular case I think it's a skip green. This paint is an American Journey paint from Cheap Joe's Art Supply. I know it's a very funny name, but they do a great job. And so this is Skip Lawrence is one of the artists that they work with a lot. And this paint is just a great, brilliant color. So this is Skip Green. It does sound like it might be like skipping, but I'm pretty sure it's for skip. Okay, so I'm going to just try some slashes of this great color across. I'm going to have some that start at the water and go up, so they're more pointy rather than so kind of dull stroke as this was. There we go. The beginning and end of your brush stroke make a big difference. So part of thinking about it is deciding, are you going to start here and go there, or start there and come here? This seems to be bleeding up a little bit. I'm really pleased with that. That's perfect. That allows it to form a natural blend from the bank up into the trees. This is great. We're going to start working again on the rocks now. And one of the things I'm going to do is mask around the rocks a little bit. I want to do some kind of tricky stuff, and I don't necessarily want to get it on the rest of my painting. So there's all sorts of different kinds of masks. You can use Frisket or masking fluid. Those work great. For me, they just take too much time and you have to wait for them to dry. And sometimes when you pull them off, then they pull the surface of your paper off too. So to go around the nose of this rock, I'm actually taking my paper tape and just creating the shape that's, I kind of think, is this rock. It might not be exactly right. And you'll see, it doesn't make, it's not exact. So I've got this rock pretty well masked off. And I'll be able to use the same tape on other rocks too. But I like it because it comes off the paper so easily. So I'm going to press it down, and I'm going to take my sponge. And my sponge, I'm trying to rinse out so it doesn't have a lot of residual color on it. And in this particular case, I'm using a soft sponge. I'm taking a littler piece. But this is one of those cases where even a household sponge might work because it's a little bit stiffer. What color am I going to want? I'm going to mix up a little puddle of kind of a dark color. So a little bit of blue, a little bit of purple, a little bit of brown, a little bit of green. Right now, you'll notice I didn't rinse off my brush. I might want this color again, and there's a lot of this paint on the brush, so I'm just putting it down knowing that that paint is on the brush. It's a little dangerous to do because sometimes you'll reach for that brush thinking it's clean. I recommend you always rinse off your brushes when you're done using that stroke, but in this case I want to save that color. Okay, I'm going to now just sponge on some of this color. And because I have it masked, I can sponge beyond my rock and it's no problem. I think I'll just sponge a little onto here too, just for fun. I didn't go wild, so I didn't need to mask that off. That's all that masking, and that's all it took. I'm going to let that dry a little bit. I think I might go back up to, I love the feeling of this greenery up in my trees. I'm going to add some more green in the trees, and I might just leave this right side up so it's easier for both of us to see. Now I'm deciding, I think I will still leave this color on this brush. So let me switch to a flat brush for up here. And again, I know what I'm going to do. Just water in a spray bottle, and I'm just going to spray the top of it. And I think it's going to start spraying. Let me see, maybe my angle's too uncertain. Oh, for heaven's sakes. This is not working for me. Here we go. Can you see the water beating up? That's just what I want. You can also see some backflows. Those are perfect in these trees. That's wonderful. I didn't even have to do them myself. The water did that. That's the great thing about watercolor. You can do part of it, and the paint in the water does part of it. Okay, I'm going to pick a green that has more blue in it. So I've taken the skip green and I'm adding some blue. My paints are drying out so fast here in the sunshine that it's a whole different challenge. The other great thing about painting outside is you can continue to look at what you're looking at and see how does that really look. And that's a very rich hunter green, but there's also quite a bit of blue in it. So I'm going to add a little bit more blue, and I do want to make sure that it's not quite wet enough. Okay. Here we go. Do you see how it's just running amok on its own? That's perfect. That's exactly what I want. It's finding those pieces of water from the spray bottle and just running every which way with it. I couldn't possibly paint all those little rivers. It would be way too arduous and it would look more mechanical. So allowing the spray bottle to handle moving a lot of the paint around makes it look much more natural, much more organic. Some people get confused with that term organic when we're using it in a painting way. And I guess what I mean by that is more made by nature, not so much man-made, but just something that feels more natural, more made by nature, unmessed around with. I'm also being careful to not cover up all my sky holes because, as you know, we've been working to protect those, and I don't want them all to disappear. Adding a little bit more blue here and there because there's a lot of blue in this sky, in these trees. I don't want them to be too dotty, so need a little bit more water over here. There's kind of a magic touch on this. You don't want it to be completely saturated, so you need to be careful that that everything doesn't get wet. But you do want it to run in some rivers. So on the sky part, this is probably layer 3 or 4, I think. And there is a watercolor artist who every painting she does, I think 100, 150 layers. I was kind of fascinated by that. I thought, how could you get anything painted in 150 layers and not just have a big blob of dark paint? So for a couple years I challenged myself to just paint in layers, and I found that I enjoyed it. Each layer needs to be pretty light, but there's some challenges to it. But it's also, here's my little house, and I'm being careful not to put too much of the this darker green on my house. But painting in layers allows you to see how watercolor can build up and create some beautiful shapes and colors that you weren't necessarily even thinking of, in a very nice, appealing way. This is getting a little too blue. I'm going to add a little bit more yellow back. And that'll bring it back to a more green and not quite so blue. I can tell it's getting dry too, so I'm going to do a little bit more spraying. Sometimes when I'm outside and it's drying this fast, I'll have to paint two-handed. I'll have brushes in both hands and have to be doing something with one hand and quickly filling in something with the other. I can't be talking though when I'm doing that. That's just one too many things going on. Trust me, you don't want me to be doing that. Okay, I think that's a good stopping space for this part of the green. You can see that some of it is green, some of it has the sky holes coming through. I'm happy with that. Okay, so let's move back now to this front part again. I'll take the tape off the rock and you can see the texture that we created just with that little sponging. When I do techniques, I don't like them to be so obvious that the viewer can say, oh, I see, she used a sponge there. Oh, I see, she used a fan brush here, or whatever it is, because I think that takes away the experience. Just like if you're watching a movie and all of a sudden you can see, oh, an odd shadow from a camera or something, it breaks your concentration. So I want to use these techniques and I want to share them with you, but I don't like them to dominate the painting. Okay, so let's see what our next step should be. I think I'll start to take a watercolor pencil and mark in some of the shapes that I'll be looking at for the grasses. Before I do that, I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to change my water in my paint pot so it's not quite so grubby. It's taken a couple minutes to get the water, and while we've been working on it, we've gotten a few backflows, and a backflow happens when part of the paper is wet and it flows under paint that you already have that's drier. Now, it can be very problematic. Like if this was a face I was painting, the backflows would be quite unattractive, leaving hard edges. But in these trees, it's perfect. It leaves some hard edges and some soft edges. So that's one of the wonderful things about watercolor. You work with the water, the air, everything that's happening, and as you're waiting to see what's going on, some wonderful things can happen. So the trees are working hard while I'm patiently waiting, which is good. And hi, fly. And we have, I think what I'll do now is, as often happens when water and a land mass, in fact, you can see it right here. Here's a land mass, and water is flat, of course. It could have a ripple on the surface, but it's going to be flat on the top. So the water is reflecting the sun, and the land mass has a verticalness to it. So at this time of the day, the land mass is going to have a shadow, and it's going to meet a lighter colored water. So what I need to do now is add a dark shadow along this edge where it's good, where the edge of the land is going to be meeting the water. And I'm going to hang on to my hat in the wind.